What is a heart leader? What makes heart leadership different?
A heart leader is someone who blends logic and intellect with compassion and empathy for a greater impact. They lead with their heart, their empathy, their sympathy.
Leading your life in this way has a huge ripple effect.
For so long, we've viewed love or vulnerability or care as weakness. Heart leadership doesn't have a shape or a size. This isn't about being perfect. Anyone can step up at any time. People don't have to feel alone. They can feel empowered and united and stronger together.
It doesn't have to be a lonely journey. We have been traveling like crazy, going around talking about the book and having the opportunity to share what it means to be a heart-driven hero, or what we call heart leaders. So, what an amazing topic to dive into in this podcast: heart-driven heroism or heart leadership. And what does that actually mean? Because it is something we get asked. Why do you have the Heart Leader podcast? What is a heart leader? What is heart leadership? So, why not really kind of break that down and share from our perspective? One, why did we create the Heart Leader podcast? And what is a heart leader? What makes heart leadership different? And why do we think it's the leadership of the future?
It's a lot of great questions there. So a lot of
Got to
fun we can
start out
talk about.
strong, right?
Yes, yeah. Well, let's tackle the first one, right? It's, what is a heart leader? And it's not like heart leaders are new. And I think that's something that it's really important to feel through and understand when talking about the subject. Maybe the term might be newer, whether it's heart leader or heart-centered leadership or heart-driven. These are concepts that have been a part of leadership for a very, very long time. It's nice that we are, as a society and a collective, starting to focus on those, or like it's those traits are the ones that are actually resonating with people. Those are the ones that are creating the leadership that will last. There's all different types of leadership. There's a lot of fear-based leadership. That's been a long part of human history. And we all know what that's led to. But when we do actually see a massive impact, we see people who are really making a difference, and we see not just one person, but a wave of people, that's usually driven by a heart leader in some way, shape, or form. And a heart leader is someone who doesn't just think with their head, but they feel. They lead with their heart, their empathy, their sympathy, their connection, their understanding to oneness in all that's around them. And then they utilize their head. They utilize their thinking, their logic, their brain power in that sense, to blend logic and intellect with compassion and empathy for a greater impact.
Because what even I experienced in my life, fear-based leadership does get results, but those results are temporary, and it's always at a greater expense. It gets things done fast because people are afraid, and so there's this huge adrenaline rush, and people will quickly submit in order to avoid the pain of the fear. But they also miss a lot because their focus is on the fear and not the outcome. And leadership based in that fear model never truly achieves the long-term goal. But when you find those leaders that lead with love, inspiration, commitment to the human behind the effort and the mission behind the purpose, then ultimately, yes, you may take a little bit longer, but the lasting impact far exceeds anything that you could have initially anticipated. And that's what we talk about when we talk about heart driven heroes who are out there leading with that love, that courage, that impact. Because when all we're focused on as leaders are bottom lines and strategies that can be quickly implemented, we're actually forgetting the human capital behind that. And that human capital is the very thing that we desire to invest in the first place, because that product is for a human. Most of the time, that's what we're creating any product for. So if we forgot the human in the initial creation of the product, then we're forgetting that a human is what's going to actually ultimately make us successful at the end. And we're missing the whole point all along the way. So, heart driven leaders remember the purpose from the start to the very finish.
Mm.
And that's the person all along the way. And you actually increase any monetization you're looking for, you increase any lasting impact you could potentially have, and you excel even from a business standpoint, let alone the way you're leading your own life. And so that's why when we talk about creating this podcast, it's to help anyone who's starting out in this capacity to understand if you're leading a business, you're not going to lose by implementing this model. If you're leading your life, it doesn't matter. You don't have to be leading some large scale organization. Leading your life in this way has a huge ripple effect. If you're leading a family, it's the same. We all benefit when we start to look at how we can lead from a heart centered place and then take it up and incorporate thought into how we take those actions. Do you ever get tired of that negative voice in your head telling you what you can and cannot do? My name is Amber Mikesell, and I personally got tired of that villainous voice controlling my inner realm. So I wrote this book, Silence Your Inner Critic. It's a comic book type series where you go in and you fight that villainous foe all along an epic quest. You can learn more about this fun filled adventure over at silenceyourinnercritic.com, and you can purchase your copy right there, or you can purchase it wherever you enjoy buying books.
The irony is that for so long we've viewed love or vulnerability or care as weakness.
Yeah.
But each of these, I want to say they're character traits, but they're also an energy. They're a frequency that we hold, and they can actually be scientifically measured, which is amazing. These frequencies are at a higher frequency than the lower ones, like fear, guilt, shame. If we move forward with like a fear-based leadership, we elicit those type of responses, right? And so the irony of the whole thing is that when we do lead with love, because we're at a higher frequency, we actually have a greater capacity in which we could make an impact. Law of transmutation, higher frequency trumps lower frequency. And so if fear, um, I don't remember the exact off the top of my head. I want to say it's somewhere in the 50 to 100 range, right?
Yeah, I think so. I'd
Yeah.
have to look. Don't
Yeah.
quote us on this one because I don't
I
remember the
don't remember the
scale
exact.
like exactly, but
Yeah. You can see that it's just so much lower for fear and stress, anxiety, shame, guilt. They're all these low frequencies. And love, starts at 528, and then it just kind of keeps going higher and higher and higher. So at a minimum, you're looking at a 5 times greater capacity just by showing up in love. And so if your goal is impact, then why are you showing up 5 times less than if you would otherwise? So even just from a logical standpoint, it doesn't even make sense, which is I think the irony is because when we're stuck in our heads, we think logically, but the reality is we're not actually acting logically. It's, as you said, inefficient, and it's not logic. And so this isn't actually helpful because it's short term and most people are looking to impact on a long-term basis. So
Yes.
again, these things are all working against the benefit of leading with fear, where I can't find a negative of leading with love.
Yes.
I just can't.
Now, I want to do, as we do, always look at the other side.
Yeah.
And sometimes people will say, well, don't people take advantage of leaders who lead with love? Those who are coming at this full heart on, full heart forward, and saying, okay, I'm going to invest in my people and I am going to just be the kind of leader that inspires and is committed to doing things in a very different way. Ultimately, yes. Yes, maybe some people can, if you want to call it take advantage of that, then they can take advantage. But then my question is, what do you consider taking advantage of love? Because if I, as a leader, am willing to invest in my people and I am at a place in my organization where I can afford to provide scholarships to my staff who would like to better themselves. And they work for us for, say, you have to be at our organization, commit to a 3-year term. We'll pay for a scholarship for you during those 3 years to go to get your 2-year degree. They get their 2-year degree, and after those 3 years, they leave our organization. Wouldn't I want them to go better themselves? Isn't that what I want for a person that I care about? And to see them go and succeed somewhere? Is that truly taking advantage of me? Or did they take that opportunity to better themselves and then go out and continue to contribute to the very world and society that I also am desiring to contribute to? So we have to ask ourselves, what do we consider being taken advantage of?
It's also one to think about if there is advantage being taken, it's
Hmm.
to what degree is a leader actually leading with love? Because sometimes there is um sometimes it's under the guise of love, but it actually could be under guilt.
Share.
Yeah,
I'm intrigued. I want to hear where this is going.
someone could want to be loving and maybe their intention is to be loving, but their deep desire is to be liked. The feeling that they get wanting other people to like them, whether they guilt trip them into it or guilt trip themselves into letting others take advantage of them, then I wouldn't say that's necessarily leading with love.
Yeah, that's leading with a desire to be liked through
Mhm.
ego.
Yes. And there is I feel a vast disconnect in terms of when it's just kind of like saying, okay, leading with love. And then it's kind of like put in this box. And oftentimes that box is misrepresented.
Yes. So there are a lot of questions. I think what this is unveiling is there's a lot of questions that you have to ask yourself as a heart leader. Like, what are my boundaries? And how do I implement those boundaries
Mhm.
as a heart leader? That doesn't mean that as a person, I don't have boundaries.
Mhm.
But if you're at an organization, there are organizational boundaries and parameters that you uphold as well. So, how do you have those structures in place and lead from that loving space while holding those boundaries in a very kind and loving and compassionate way
Mhm.
so that you're not being, from your perspective, taken advantage of?
Mhm.
But we also have to lovingly understand that being taken advantage of is a perspective,
Mhm.
because what one person might feel is being taken advantage of, another person may not feel is being taken advantage of.
Mhm.
And so that is a very subjective line, and it is all about the boundaries that you hold in place.
Yeah.
And so, in that heart centered space, you have to know what feels like being taken advantage is for you.
Mhm.
And then draw that clear boundary, both personally, professionally, and if you have a business, from a business structure standpoint as well. And just make sure it's clearly delineated.
Yeah.
So, that question, when asked, that's really what we have to say is know your line,
Mhm.
but also know that your line isn't the line,
It's so
right?
good. I think that's spot on, and it kind of reminds me of one of our previous podcasts we talked about where, what does it even mean to be too nice,
Yeah.
right? And it's just there are leaders out there who um, are seen as oh, they get taken advantage of because they're just so nice.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things you can be in this world, and being nice is a wonderful thing. But again, just because someone is nice doesn't mean they're leading with love,
Yes.
and there has to be a differentiation here in understanding that. Um, because leading with love also represents the self in the leader. And if they are allowing individuals, no matter what perspective is, maybe they don't feel like they are, but everyone around says, oh, well, this is, they're easy. You can get anything you want. All you have to do is do this, this, and this, and you'll get what you want. And then you can take advantage of this leader. There's a point where it just becomes, again, about ego and under ego, over ego. It can become about a lack of self love. And I think that's a huge, huge part that is not fully enveloped when talking about heart leadership. It's not just about how you are acting to other people, it's about how you're acting to yourself and finding an equilibrium, finding a balance and a harmony around that. And that's what I feel like you're bringing forward, if I'm not mistaken.
I think it's a fair point. That's not necessarily the road that I was going down,
Okay.
but I do think it's a fair point
Yeah.
because self love is included in that flow and understanding how the ego interacts with it. But again, I do feel that it's important that just because everybody else says that a leader is easy and being taken advantage of, that doesn't necessarily make it true.
Good point.
We have to understand what is right for us and how do we flow,
Mhm.
right? And I don't get into political discussions at all, but that's what happens in our current global political structure, right? You have all of these people who say this about one person and all of these people who say that about one person. But unless you are with that person on a regular basis, you have no idea.
Mhm.
And so if someone were to say, oh, you can get anything you want from that leader, well, that's just you saying it.
Mhm.
How do you know? And so I don't want to get into a position where just because people say it makes it true.
Mhm.
And as a heart leader, I think it's important that we hold that line,
Mhm.
or we're playing right into the same games of the leaders of the past.
Mhm.
And that is a hard line that as a heart leader, I draw.
Mhm.
I will not play in that because that plays into that ego, that fear, that rules of the past. And we need to be the new type of heart driven heroes who are changing those rules of the past, changing the game 100%, and refusing to play like that.
Mhm.
I don't care what anybody else says about anyone. Unless I have direct experience and I know that that is my experience, I don't care. I will understand that for myself. And so, while I appreciate that dialogue and I know what point you're making, I think it's also important that we begin to shift away as heart leaders and say, my heart will tell me through direct experience. Otherwise, I don't know.
There's only so much time that I can set the stage for context and provide a situation in order to express it.
Yep.
And so,
And
obviously
you
that's
gave
what
the
that,
opportunity for
yeah,
another
yeah.
one.
And I gave the opportunity for another one,
You
and
set
both
the
can
stage.
exist, right? And so, absolutely. No, I mean, that's 100%. I was attempting, yeah, to give a certain example, not thinking about whether it was saying, it was like assuming that this was the reality that everyone in that everyone was experiencing.
Yep.
And so, but yeah, no, you're right. I mean, that's a a lot of today is shaped in highlight reels, and we make split decisions or understandings, or we even put people in boxes because of those highlight reels. And there's a lot of this world that is designed on highlight reels. I mean, that's what we do with our podcast, with 1 minute reels. I mean, literally they're called reels, like,
Uh-huh.
to give
But
people
they're
a
not real.
snapshot, but they're not real, right? Our EEL and our EAL are very different, or they can be.
Yeah.
Um, we definitely do our best to show, hey, this is our authentic conversation. What you see in a reel is what you're going to get in a podcast, and so on and so forth. And then what you see on our podcast is what you get if you interact with us, and it's all the way through. Um, that's not the case for a lot of things, and I get that. Because I was there a lot, for a vast majority of my 20s, late teens and 20s. I wanted to be seen in a specific way, and I didn't even know how to live up to that. And so it's not a judgment call that I'm seeking to bring forward. Just simply an understanding that it's easy to fall back on these old patterns of saying, "Oh, well, fear always got results," because we see that in history,
Yep.
right? And history repeats itself, and so it's less like, "Oh, okay, well then that clearly got results, and here we are thousands of years later, and that seems to still be the case, and it's happening now, right now, in different ways." But to your point, that's not. At some point, we have to say, just because that's the way it's always been done doesn't mean that's the way it always has to be done. And we can even change that. I'd love to get to a standpoint where when we're talking about heart leadership, and people say, well, yeah, that's the way it's always been done. And that's a beautiful thing, right? The energy behind that is just a different feeling. And that's an incredible aspect. But we're still learning as a species what love truly is, what it means. How do we embody it? How do we engage in it? How do we provide it to ourselves? How do we provide it to the people around us? And so it's no wonder that there's a confusion around it, because it really stems from a lack of awareness within self. When there's a confusion internally, there's going to be a confusion externally.
And I do want to say thank you for teeing it up. I know you
Yeah.
didn't do it intentionally. I know that you didn't intend in any way to create a scenario that would have created like you would behave in that way. So I do want to like
Mm,
put that out there. I wasn't coming at you. I was
I didn't feel that
just
way in any ways, but thank you.
yeah.
Yeah. No, I loved the passion behind it. I think it was a point that wasn't originally what we were gonna kind of dive into. And so I love that it
Yeah.
naturally came up, but I
It
think it's
is
really
so
relevant, right?
unscripted, these
Yeah.
conversations, but that's how our conversations are.
Yeah.
And we've always said to our community that we'll invite you into our conversations, and
Yeah.
this is what happens. So, one thing we do want to do though, because we have so much fun when we do these, we
Yes.
like bring in quotes so that we can talk about them.
Yes.
And since we are diehard superhero movie kind of geeks, I have one that says, a leader isn't the strongest, the fastest, or the smartest. It's the one who can bring people together. And that's T'Challa from the Black Panther.
Wakanda forever.
Wakanda forever. That movie means a lot to me personally. For those who know me, you know why. But I would like to know your feels on that quote, especially when it comes to heart leadership.
Heart leadership doesn't have a shape or a size or any relative specificity to that. Anyone can be a heart leader. I guess I'm just kind of thinking out loud here. In the past, when it does have to be like a fear based, for example, it was a lot of people who were kind of large, right? A big, a tall, or there was like a stature in a lot of ways. Or and if they didn't have that stature, it was a personality. It was a large personality, and so there was like this wanting to dominate or be bigger than the others in that sense. What I love so much about that quote and about the heart leadership aspect is that there's equality, there's an understanding, there's a natural oneness baked into it. There's a connectedness where fear in these other positions, it's a separation.
Yes.
What that quote to me means is oneness in action. And if you look at the way that, like anyone have their faults, and in that movie, T'Challa's father, T'Chaka, like, he had his faults. Even T'Challa had his faults through the process, and so not everyone's going to be perfect. This isn't about being perfect, but as a whole, that they as leaders, they attempted to run that society very, very well. There were people were aligned, people were respected across the board. There was a lot of love and loyalty and connection, and they viewed each other as one and supported each other as one, and they used technology to lift each other up. And so, yeah, in the moment, T'Challa, like, he had superpowers, right? Being the Black Panther. But in order to find the next leader, what they did is they stripped away that power,
Mhm.
because just like with Captain America, that power uh, took what was already within and made it
Amplified it.
amplified, right?
Yeah.
And that's what happened with Red Skull. Same thing, almost the same serum as Captain America, but a very, very different person.
Yeah.
For me, I know it's a little bit of a tangent, but it does have this feeling of oneness and connection, and that it can be anyone. And to me, that has oneness and unity and love baked into it because of that. And anyone can step up at any time.
And I would love to hear from our community, anyone who's listening, like what does that invoke within you when you hear a quote like this, or you really feel into heart leadership and you consider yourself a heart leader? What does that really feel within you? Especially the part for me where it says it's the one who can bring people together.
Mhm.
Because if we really sit and we think about it and we feel into it, we've all brought people together in some way in our life, whether it's a family gathering or friends together or in our workplace. We've all had these moments of being a leader and that heart leader. But that usually comes from that heart center, that desire to gather together,
Mhm.
to be together in that heart coherence way. And so there is that essence of it that you're talking about, that oneness. And if we all just start there, if we don't make it this big complicated thing of thinking about how am I going to be a heart leader, but we just fall back into that resonance of the heart part of this.
Mhm.
And we feel out from there. And we just focus on how do I desire to bring the people in my life together? That's an easy beginning to becoming a heart leader. What is the purpose of that? What is my role in that? Like, what do I feel around that? It will find its way from there,
Yeah.
just like it did for T'Challa, right?
Yes. Absolutely. And that's something that I love too, is that we can take that same concept and turn that internally. We can take the pieces of us that feel fragmented and we can pull them together to create a whole version of ourselves. If each one of us took the time to do that, just, and then you can use your head on this one, think about the impact that would make on this world. A lot of the issues and problems that are going on are because there's a lot of disharmony within ourselves. And when there's disharmony within, then we project it on other people. And then that creates rift and separation. And because we internally feel separated from ourselves.
Yeah.
And we feel like we need something outside of ourselves to fill it up. And then so it's like all accumulation of anything, whether it's, people or money or, I mean, you name it, power, whatever it is. It's just
Bring it
my
in, bring it
this.
in, bring it
And
in.
it's just an empty void.
Mhm,
But, and then again, that's just more separation, right?
mhm.
But if we really dive into the internal and we create that connection within and that love within, and we create that wholeness within, and it's amazing because you can start to see other people and their wholeness. I know you did. You saw it. You had a greater sense of wholeness, far greater than I did of myself when we first met. And you saw me as a whole person before I even saw myself in that way. And there are very few things that are more inspiring than someone seeing you for you before you even see yourself in that capacity. And I just wish that everyone could be seen in the way that you saw me, even though that's not 100% possible because you can't see all 9 billion people or however many people there are. Um, Everyone has the ability to see themselves. And I feel like that's part of this journey here is that we get that opportunity. And we are all a mirror for each other in that sense, back to go within. And when we can create that wholeness and that oneness within, then we can show others what's possible. And so we can heal each other by healing ourselves first. And what an uncomplicated approach.
Yeah.
And what a powerful and impactful approach that allows for autonomy, sovereignty, and oneness and connection where people don't have to feel alone. They don't have to feel separated. They can feel empowered and united and stronger together. And again, that's what I feel like T'Challa was saying, is a leader that brings them together because we all understand innately that we're stronger together.
I mean, we were on a call with someone this morning who was talking about how it feels like such a lonely journey.
Mhm.
It doesn't have to be a lonely journey at all. This podcast and the programs that we're creating with Suivera, the organization that brings the Heart Leader podcast forward, the whole point is this life doesn't have to be a lonely journey because so many people feel alone even when they're with other people. But it's so often because we aren't leading a life from our hearts and connecting our hearts with other hearts. We're attempting to think about what our life should be and fit ourselves into a life that doesn't quite fit.
Mhm.
And I know because that's what I was doing before I became the whole person that you met. I was very out of alignment and I needed to have my Doctor Strange moment
Mhm.
and be broken down to build the life that I was actually here to live and be my purposeful life. And when I did, then it was very much the journey you explained. I could be the heart leader. I could lead my life from my heart and be my authentic self and live my authentic purpose. Then I could help others who were seeking to do the same. I couldn't do it for them,
Mhm.
but I could at least help them understand the disconnect that has happened between thinking our life and feeling our life and using our mind and our brain to help us along that path. And that's what heart leaders have the opportunity to do.
Mhm.
So if you are either a heart leader already in action, or you are seeking that awakening in your heart. You know that you're on the cusp. Maybe you're having your own Doctor Strange moment, and you know that it is time and you're ready to move from thinking your life to feeling your life and having that heart be the one that's guiding you and utilizing your brain and your mind to support all of that. Then, one, you can continue to explore right here on the Heart Leader podcast. We have so much amazing content out here, and we would love for you to explore. But you can also head over to suivera.org and check out all of the amazing things that we have in motion. We just had a really cool rebrand. So we've got a fresh new look and we've got a lot of fun things in motion. We cannot wait to continue to support you along your epic journey to really engaging in the life that you are here to live. Until next time.